Greetings and salutations, old friends, and hopefully some new friends. And welcome to Truthseekers. I'm Stephen Cambion, your host. And tonight I'm very excited about because a lot of you know that I have a background in computer science, and having that sort of a background makes me somebody who really appreciates data. And I found this book, which is amazing, and it is just filled. The whole thing is filled with UFO data. It's called the UFO Sightings Desk Reference, and it is by Linda Miller, Costa, and tonight's guest, co-authored by Cheryl Costa. I did not want to waste too much time with a big intro or anything like that. I want to have as much time for questions and comments and questions from the audience as well. I'm curious to see what it is that the data, what Ms. Costa has learned from compiling all of this incredible UFO data into one desk reference. So let's welcome Ms. Costa. Welcome, Ms. Costa.
Hi, how you
Good to
doing,
see
Steve?
you. Good to see you. I told you I'm a computer science guy, and honestly, I'm getting tired of these books full of fake sources, fake stories, fake people that surround the UFO topic. These vultures that rush in to try to make money off of the subject. And so finding your book was kind of like a breath of fresh air because here is compiled data and research that spans how many years does the data in this book span?
This version of the book is 2001 to 2020. So it's a 20-year sample of data.
Wow. And first, I want to ask you what got you interested in the subject of UFOs to begin with before we get more deep into the book side of things?
T- I was 12 years old and saw my first one with my mother and father. It was a late August afternoon, about 3 weeks before school went back into session. And it was a Sunday afternoon. We were coming down off a hill in the country from my uncle's farm, and my mother had my father pull the car off the dirt road a little bit and pointed out to a clear blue western sky, and parked out there like a rock was this silver ball. And to give you an idea how big it is, if you hold out your arm and look at your little fingernail, that's about how big it was from a perspective. And we sat there for 20 minutes talking about it. My mother said it might be something the Air Force is doing. NASA was only 5 or 6 years old at that point. She explained that. And then she said, it might be people from another world. Of course, that fascinated me as a 12-year-old. And when we got the car down to the bottom of the hill and got onto the state road, I got up in the back window of that big old Chevy Impala, 1965 this was, and I'm sitting up there and going, who are you guys? Who are you guys? And when that thing decided to leave, it was one of these poof things, like gone, like like we see in Starship movies now, gone. And that changes you. And, when you're 12, 13 years old, mom and dad are sort of stupid, that kind of thing. And, but my mom and I, while we disagreed on a whole lot of things, we did not disagree on this topic matter. We got books in the library. She'd read one, I'd read one. We kind of give each other little book report kind of things about it. When Von Daniken's book came out, Chariots of the Gods, I was in high school. And it was like, wow, she dog-eared on the top, I dog-eared on the bottom. The book got torn to pieces, and then I just was casually read all the rest of my life. And I went in the military right out of high school. So there was this issue of security clearances. They frowned on people being part of MUFON, that kind of thing. So I stayed.
Well, nowadays everybody frowns on anybody being part of MUFON. Thanks
Well,
to
yeah.
Jan Harzan. Yeah, whatever credibility they had is circling the drain, I think. But yeah.
Well, the bottom line was I basically just read things, and then every now and then I got an opportunity to stay at somebody's house who happened to have a huge library of this stuff, and I just kept well read. What really got me going on this was in 2012. I was working for a newspaper. I was in the technical department. I was not a reporter yet, and there was a little sidebar story on CNN.com, and I happened to glance at it, and a little 150, 200 word story. It said, UFOs have been declining since the 1980s. Maybe they were always just an urban legend. And my gut my gut instinct says, wait a minute, that doesn't sound right. That sounds like misinformation. So for the first time in my life, this is in November of 2012, I went out to National UFO Reporting Center's website, Googled it, and I went in there and I got a couple of pages back onto the thing, found some end of year totals, pulled them out, started throwing them into a spreadsheet, and the chart went up like a rocket. And I thought to myself, wait a minute, they're supposed to have been declining? What memo
Yeah,
did the UFOs get?
somebody was wrong with their data or with their
Exactly.
analysis of the data, right?
Exactly. So what happened after that was the way it worked at the newspaper, once the press starts running the morning edition, we got about 2 hours to kill while the press is running, and after it's done, we all go home. And so I was just sitting there looking at other stories the follow-on nights, and I was expecting to see a lot of wacky stuff, but most people were extremely sincere.
Sure,
Usually
yeah.
you'd see a line like, I was walking the dog and the dog went stiff. We saw this thing, my wife and I were on the hood of my car watching the stars when this thing we never thought really existed went over, that kind of stuff. So I was finishing up a writing degree. I was retired from Lockheed Martin at this point. I had 32
Yeah,
years with Lockheed.
you got an interesting life here because you're in the military, you worked for Lockheed Martin, you're an investigative journalist, you did a podcast sort of or a show, like a radio show, right? About
Yeah. Oh yeah. I've
and
had many radio shows.
wow, yeah,
So
interesting.
the bottom line was I took somebody's stories that had no who in them, who, what, when, where, why. Well, if I knew why, and I told an editor, if I knew why and I could prove it, I'd be getting a Pulitzer and a Nobel Prize. We can't tell you who because the database won't share that publicly, and we don't have the level of clearance into New Fork or MUFON's data to know who it is, and we don't want to out anybody either. There's this terrible stigma, So I just started writing the stories very matter of factly, and I pitched about 6 or 7 editors, and they chased me out of their offices and called me a crackpot and everything. Finally, an editor at a local weekly said, "Come on up, let's talk. I hear you're out pitching." So I went up to talk to him, and we talked for about 20 minutes before he even looked at my proposal. And it turned out he was very, very sympathetic to the topic matter. He says, "I can't write this kind of a column, but you can." So I gave him 4 issues, 4 episodes or 4 articles, and he said, "I'll try you out for a month." And he had this tone kind of like from the Princess Bride, like the dread pirate Roberts. "I'll most likely kill you in the morning. I'll take you off in a month, And so I did this, and about a month later, he called him up and says, "Cheryl, come on over. We got to talk." I thought, "Oh, that's it. It's over with." I get in there, and he's got a couple of other columnists in the room. And as I walked in, a couple minutes late for the meeting, and he points at me and says, "There's our rock star." I said,
Oh, cool.
What are you talking about?" He says, "You're pulling more page views than." Remember, this is a web column.
Oh,
He
okay,
says,
so you're pulling more page
"Yeah,
views than anyone. Yeah.
they didn't have the advertising real estate put me in the printed paper. Towards the end, they almost did, but the paper went out of business before that. But
Yeah, most newspapers are now. Yeah.
boy, they've been dropping like flies up here in upstate New York, or being bought by Gannett, one or the other. Well, the bottom line was, he said, "Just keep doing what you're doing." 6 months later, the digital editor who was my contact I was always a freelance. I was never actually an employee. I was a paid freelance.
Oh, sure. There's lots of freelance. Yeah.
And so what happened was I was writing all these columns, and they took me in 6 months later, the digital editor, and he says, "You're drawing a national audience." I said, "Huh?" "On a weekly paper up in upstate New York?" And he says, "Yeah." And at the Christmas party, him and the publisher took me up in front of everybody and says, "She's drawing an international audience." That's how big the column came out of a dinky little paper in upstate New York.
Well, it just goes to show you how popular the topic is
Oh,
becoming
yeah.
and has become. And there's always, even people I know that don't have a huge interest in UFOs, when they see a story, they'll read it. So, it goes to show you how popular, I suppose. Yeah.
Well, that, and they share it with their friends. If they know friends are interested in the topic. And the way I wrote those articles back then was I always wrote them less sensational. I didn't want to do big sighting. No, I simply I wrote the story up very much like the car wreck down in the corner, the fire across town, the robbery over in the other block. I made it very a matter of fact. People resonated with the fact that I was treating it like any other story, and that one I got a lot of fan mail like that. So
I like to call it. Yeah.
so what ended up happening? People don't realize when you write a column, people say, wow, that must be fun. I said, think of it this way. I got a 400 to 500 word term paper I've got to deliver every Thursday night, and people get that, and sometimes there's nothing worse than being there on Wednesday evening and knowing you haven't written a word, Are we there? Are we okay?
No, yeah, we're okay. Somebody's mentioning that my audio volume is low.
Yours is a tad low.
All right, I'm gonna crank it up then. Just
Okay,
bear
great.
with me.
So ultimately what we did was sometimes I started going and looking, since New York State was my beat, the column was called New York Skies. I would start adding up the numbers either from New Fork or from MUFON for that county, okay, or the cities in that county. And that's how I started doing the statistics. And we ended up doing New York State one year in 2015. We did New York State, the whole state. Okay, 60 counties, 60 odd counties, 62 counties. And we started showing the data to some of the old time MUFON investigators, MUFON directors and things here in the state. And these guys were looking at it and said, we didn't know there was a cluster there. We didn't know there was a cluster there either. What did you do different? We added county data. Neither database had county data. And once you put county data to those cities, suddenly you start getting a bigger picture. And that's when Linda and I were sitting down one night in our pub talking, look at all the cool stuff we found. And we said, well, what if we did the whole country?
Yeah.
We figured it'd take us a year. It took us 18 months. And Linda's approach, and this is the thing. I'm sorry she couldn't be here with us. The corn pollen not pollen, but corn silk stuff up here.
Yeah,
it's killing us, right? It's killing us right now. She's the scientist of the two of us. She's got the real bona fide science degrees. Okay. She used to be at the National Academy of Science. She was the head librarian at the toxicology library at the EPA for 15 years. Sharp lady. And she says, let's do a scientifically driven census of UFOs. And she did some research, and nobody had done anything like this since Project Blue Book 50, 60 years before. So we said, okay, let's do this. Now, here's the deal. That's another reason why I usually talk at the national conventions, because I've got the arts and entertainment degree and the writing degree. I got the top hat and the cane. I'm not scared of a 5,000 people audience, that kind of thing. So I get to do all the talks in most of the radio shows. But so we actually started working on it, building it in late 2015, and in 2016 was our production year, and we released it in the spring of 2017, and it covered 2001 through 2015.
Wow, that's interesting. So, one of the things
that's what this book looked like. We call it the white book.
Big, thick book of data. Yeah.
Yeah, 2.5 pounds.
That's an awful lot of paper. Yeah. So, let me ask you some questions then.
Sure, anything.
In the last 20 years, are UFO sightings increasing or decreasing?
Okay. Starting around 2001 to about 2006, they start, I'm going to go up this, they start ramping up. Okay. There's a 6 to 8 year cycle. Okay. If you go back 30 or 40 years and look at the thing, it's like a little snake going across the lawn like that. People used to call it the 7-year cycle. It's a 6 to 8 year cycle. And the reason it was ramping up from 2001 to 2006, being an old IT person, I went out and checked some maps on this. And this is when all the major cities started having broadband in the major metropolitan areas and their suburbs. So broadband was a driver. In 2000, this is not the first year. It's still part of the 20th century. 2000 was. 2000, they had barely 660 sightings. In 2001, we had 4,500. And this is one of the drivers. People have access to broadband and easy ability to report what they see. So that was one of the things we learned.
Okay, so So you think that there was increase in what, the internet connectivity that made
Well,
it easier for
at
people?
that point, and then we watched the curve go up. Okay, from 2006 up to about 2010, it dips ever so slightly, and then it starts going up again, and it went up into the tens and twelves and 13,000s for the year type of thing, and then in 2014 it started falling off by 30% a year and bottomed out in 2017. Now, a lot of people were saying, getting on social media. Oh my God, Space Force chased them away, and oh my God, it's this, is that.
Sure.
Oh, I heard they ran out of grants, all this kind of stuff, and I kept trying to tell people they'll be back in 2 years. Trust me, this is part of a natural cycle. Nobody believed me. So I took 2019 off to work on other projects because I knew the UFOs would be coming back in 2020, and they did. So
It's amazing you could be that precise with your predictions, but I
um,
guess data.
somebody called me up and told me the numbers were back. A reporter out in the West Coast called me up and told me his phone's ringing off the hook. Okay, I went out to the National UFO Reporter Center. This is the spring of 2020, just before we got locked down. And January, February were there already. And I grabbed those two numbers from National UFO Reporting Center since it was public, and I dropped it in. I'd already built a mathematical model. IT person, and and it shot up. And I said, well, if things keep going at this rate, we're going to have as good a year as we had in 2012 or 2013. Okay, and it was the best year since then, just from 2 months. And then when we went into lockdown, I had already said on a bunch of radio shows that leisure time is a driver. People have to be out and about, coming home from Bible study, to go to get in the car. Hey, honey, look at that. Out walking the dog, out for a smoke, out for a break from work at the factory in the middle of the night. Leisure time was a driver, the availability of the observer to see these things. So people said, well, wait a minute, if we're getting locked down, you should have a perfect laboratory to measure whether or not, leisure time really truly is a thing. And March and April, when we got the numbers, went through the roof in 2020.
Well, that's interesting.
Confirming what I knew, but confirming to everybody else what we knew. So these are the kinds of things we learn from all this stuff. Linda found out when we were working the first book. We had pretty much tabulated the charts and graphs on the idea of scale, how much of it there was. And she looked at me one Saturday afternoon. She's over there working on a chapter, and she said, did you notice that the monthly chart? Now, a lot of people told me, oh, you don't want to do that monthly chart. It's stupid. UFOs by month in a year.
I would think it was important.
Well, it turned out to be very important, because what Linda discovered was, as soon as you started looking at it from a monthly standpoint, if you're in a northern state, most of the year is flat and quiescent amount of sightings, okay? Mm-hmm. And then you get June, July, and August, it goes through the roof. This is what the chart looks like, okay? And then it falls off again as you go into the fall and winter months, okay? I thought it was like that everywhere. But Linda said, hey, did you notice if you're in the middle level states, that peak starts coming down, all the rest of the levels start coming up. And then when you get into the deep south states, it was statistically flat. Okay. And we said, wow, who knew this? That temperate weather was a driver. Okay. In fact, if you get down to the really deep parts of Texas and Florida, those counties, there's actually a dip in the middle because it's too hot to be outside in the summertime, that kind of thing.
That's pretty interesting. So human behavior drives a lot of the sightings.
Yes. Now there's the golden word right there. This is as much about human behavior as it is about the UFOs. Okay. I like to tell people, just think of the UFOs as regularly scheduled flights. There's lots of them up there.
Rarely scheduled flights. Yes.
There are some shapes that I can predict where they are, that type of thing. They're very small shapes. That's a problem we have in this country too, by the way. Let's bring that up. People always, especially mainstream reporters, talk to us. Okay, they're dumb on this topic. Okay, and they say, well, what's the number one mega sighting? What's the one with the most sightings? And I said, a twinkling light in the sky that dances around. Not much of a thing.
Yeah, that could be anything, right?
It could be anything. and very, there are a lot of UFOs that you see that's just a light in the sky, and then it stops, and then it dances around like a fairy, and then takes off. There's a lot of that kind of stuff going on too. But there are some people sit there and say, "I saw this big bright star, and it was Arcturus, or it was Venus or something." The bottom line was, we figured out that. Oh, I just drew a blank by telling you that. Darn it! It sucks to get old. Trust me.
That's all right. I suffer from CRS myself.
Oh,
Can't
okay.
remember anything.
Oh, okay. But bottom line with the whole thing with sightings was there. Oh, I know what it was. We discovered two truths. Linda coined the term the magic, or the truth is in the non-aerodynamic shapes. And the other truth that I came up with was the truth was in the tiny numbers. There was more to learn from something that only maybe reports 400 sightings a year, or maybe even 200 sightings a year. They will tell you something very interesting that all the big numbers won't tell you. I found a couple like that when I graphed them all together, the tiny number ones were so small you could hardly tell them from the bottom of the graph. The line was so
Oh, that's interesting.
close. You had to really blow it up to see it. And it was only maybe 40 sightings a year or 70 sightings a year. But that 40 sightings a year UFOs, that one, whenever it shows up, so does two other shapes, except in a little bit higher quantity, and they had the same profiles together. So it looked like the one with the small sightings was a mothership, and the other two were support craft. That's what a lot of people seem to think when I showed it to them.
Well, that's very interesting. And another question I had is:
Sure.
Is there a state in the United States that sees the most UFO sightings, and a state that sees the least?
Okay. The top three in the country, and they've been top three probably for about 8 years now. Okay. California, 21,013 sightings. Florida, 11,043 sightings. This is over 20 years. Texas, 9,480. Now, the next 7 slots in the top 10 are like musical chairs. These states change around every year. Okay.
So do you think it's just population based though? Because those would be
No.
the three.
No.
It doesn't have a correlation to
That's
population.
it has a correlation. It has a correlation. Let me give it to you this way. And I just hide that thing? There it is. We discovered in the first book, we didn't know this. We knew population was an issue. We knew temperate weather was an issue, and we were suspecting leisure time. Okay. Now, what we discovered with this new pink book, the new one that's out, and make sure you bring me back. Ask me why it's pink. It's a great story. Okay. Principal drivers are population, temperate weather, leisure time, hours of darkness, and observer access to broadband. Okay. Now, then there's 5 secondary influencers: proximity to large bodies of water, proximity to toxic ecosystems, proximity to geological fault lines, high visibility media, and something we call the generational effect.
Wait, I need you to say that again. So because this could be of great benefit to people who want to hunt for UFOs. The most sightings are around toxic environments, coastal areas, and what did you say? Nuclear or fault lines? I'm sorry.
Fault lines. I'll give
you.
So
if you found a place with a fault line near a toxic environment near the coast, you'd have a pretty good shot at seeing some UFOs then, maybe, right?
Well, yes,
or
and
a better shot there than elsewhere.
Yeah. Well, okay. If they tend to, okay, this is the fault line proximity and the toxic ecosystems were contributed to me by a colleague here in New York, Thomas W. Conwell, and he took our first book and started putting pins and maps and things on a big wall. Destroyed the wall with the pinholes, and his wife loved it. Yeah. But the bottom line was he discovered that they seem to haunt our dead mining towns, dead strip mines, dead coal mines, coal mine fires, dead oil fields, dead gas fields, heavily
That's
polluted lakes,
interesting.
heavily polluted rivers.
I am in Pennsylvania, and there's a place called Centralia, Pennsylvania, that had to be the whole town had to be evacuated. The government bought everybody's homes
Oh yeah, I've
because
been
there's a
there.
huge because there's this huge coal fire under the ground,
Yeah.
and I hear that the UFO sightings there. If you go there, you'll see some UFOs almost every night, which is crazy to me. I have a road trip for there planned for the next month.
The only problem
It's
with
only
the road
2 hours
trip
from
there
me.
is remember the highways are sometimes falling into a deep pit because of the fires have ate all the
Well,
support.
yeah, but I know a safe. I've been there, so I know the safe way to get there and then explore the town. Yeah, it's just an eerie place though because there's it's like a
That
completely and
fire's
totally
been going for
abandoned town.
60 years. That fire's
60
been going for
years,
60
yeah.
years. Yeah.
And
So
there's a lot of strange paranormal happenings around in and around that town. It's just a mysterious place. I love it.
yeah, it's
So
cool
it's
stuff.
interesting to hear that coal fires may attract UFOs.
Now you're in Pennsylvania, aren't you?
Yes, I born and
Okay.
raised in Philadelphia. Now I live in the suburbs of Philadelphia in a
Okay,
town called
Pennsylvania
Warminster.
was number 6 for this book, and they had 7,043 sightings over the last 20 years.
Yeah, and also, don't you have to keep in mind that these aren't the number of sightings; these are just the number of reported sightings, because many people
Ah,
don't
yes.
report, right?
Yeah, and we actually developed some metrics between the first book and this book. 2 polls came out. July of 2017, Fox Pictures did a poll, and they did pretty much the same thing: 3%, but 30%, 36% believe, 42% are on the fence, and 17% say it's all hogwash. Okay, it's the same thing you keep seeing in the polls. But they had an additional question: have you ever seen a UFO? And the number came back that was like 16.5%, something like that. Okay. Well, I didn't trust the metric because this was the first poll it had ever been in. Then in September of 2019, the Gallup people did almost identically the same poll and they asked the same question and they came back with that 16% and change number too. So based on that, I went back and started crunching the numbers a bunch of different ways. And we ended up with a bell curve. Okay. If you did it for every single state, it was as little as 1 in 150 people report. Go to the other end of the bell curve, it was 1 in 450 people report. And the bulk of it around the bell of the curve was sitting around about 1 in 250 people reports what they see.
Wow,
Give or take 25, 50, something like that.
that's a pretty dismal number. But I guess there used to be quite a stigma of people that didn't want to talk about it because for fear of ridicule. But I think
Still is.
those
Still
attitudes
is.
are changing somewhat though now, aren't they? With the popularity and the mainstream coverage of all of this stuff, I think more people are willing to talk about their experiences.
Just in the past 6 months, though, with all the news that's been out there. But I don't know if you've noticed in the last 2 or 3 weeks, it's like a door slammed. Are you seeing any UFO articles? I have talked to 4 major newspapers and tried to. I had something for them, and crickets. They will not
Yeah.
talk to me.
Wow, it's interesting. Yeah, some people theorize that the government opens and shuts the door at will. You know, like
Yeah.
sometimes they want people hearing about these things, and then they say that's enough. It's interesting to see the government's reaction to some of the stuff that is being talked about on the mainstream news. But I'm very distrustful of the government. After all, in UFO mythology, they've been doing this cover up for 70 years, and I don't trust that they're just suddenly going to give us the truth now. So, when we have a lot of
Well,
former
actually,
intelligence guys running around now.
eh,
Yeah.
see, that's what's been bugging me because the inside people that I know, okay, called me up in 2019, late 2019, early 2020, and said, "Look, depending upon where the election goes, if we end up with Biden, we're probably going to get disclosure in the next year or two, or at least congressional hearings."
Hmm.
And when I those people are what we call the usual suspects, and they were on the inside track. And yes, Bucks County has an awful lot of sightings. The goofy thing was people kept coming. I had several very candid inside observers say, "Do you realize something, Cheryl and Linda? You're the only people to produce the book of statistics since Project Blue Book 50 years ago." Yeah, and they said, "Well, if they have congressional hearings, if it doesn't end up being a parade of swaggering pilots and former defense intelligence spooks, you know,
Contractors, yeah.
you guys are the only people who've got the civilian numbers." And I said, "Probably." So we talked about it and said, "Are we okay with the idea of being two old gay ladies at a congressional hearing testifying about our book
Well,
of statistics?"
I don't really think that is at all relevant. If you've got the information and the data, I think they'll take it from anybody, right?
We would
They should.
hope. We would hope. So the thing we did was we decided early on in 2020, when we actually started doing some of the preliminary work that we could do, even though we didn't have the 2019 numbers yet, we didn't have the 2020 numbers yet. In 2020, we started doing some of the preparatory work so building the book wouldn't take 2 years to do like it did last time. I built this one in under 750 hours. Okay, but
Well, that's impressive considering the amount of data that you had to pile through
we
get to it.
did a ton of prep work. And hey, when to do that? During the lockdown, there was nothing better to do but drink and watch streaming TV. You know,
I built a cabin in the woods. That's what I did.
Did you really?
Well, not the whole thing. I'd already started on it, but I got a ton done because my wife was home, and I usually am daddy daycare. But since she was home, I could go like Wednesday to Sunday and build this cabin. So I made a huge amount of progress. Still working on it.
Do you know what we discovered though? Something that we wanted to do with this book, or at least the follow-on version of the book. We discovered that 15% of the entries for the city location were spelled wrong. Okay, you can't, IT person, you can't sort on it if it doesn't look like the other thing,
Yeah, you can't sort.
And so they were either mixed case, all capitals, all lowercase, a space in front of the letters. Sometimes it would be as easy as Carmelville next to Joe's gas station. You can't sort on that kind of a field. So I made a decision back in the summer of 2020 in July. We got a golden mail list, and we found a way to merge it into the database so we can merge it back out. And then we went in there, and at about 1,500, 2,000 lines a day, it was like going back to work at Lockheed. I was putting in a 6.5 to 7 hour day from August of 2020 till the first week of January 2021, fixing the spelling. And while we were fixing that spelling, we were correcting counties that might be wrong. Okay. The original automation I had for putting in the county data was not as smart as it could be. And then the other thing we did was we added longitude information and zip code. Okay. And that has given us a window onto things because we can now plot UFOs by zip code. It is showing us a pattern.
Interesting. Yeah, that's
It's showing us a pattern nobody ever knew happened before. Some states, it looks like moths ate through the state, especially if you make the zip codes that had the sightings blue and everything else is white. It looks like a moth-eaten state. It really does. And of 42,600 zip codes in the United States, 18,800 had UFO sighting reports. We're also able to take all those UFO silhouette shapes, we'll say like triangles or spheres, and plot them by zip codes. And the patterns are very different from different shapes.
Oh, that's very interesting. So, are you able to see sort of like if there's a sighting in one state and then there's a sighting next door, that it may have been the same, the state next door?
Okay, we can't track it. We can't track it by time. Presently, we cannot track it by time.
Okay.
But we're working on that.
We had an interesting comment from Don D.
Sure.
People are asking, where would you report a UFO sighting? And somebody said MUFON charges you $20 to report a UFO. That's interesting.
No. No, they don't.
No, I don't know. Wouldn't
No.
surprise me if they did, though.
No, I don't. That doesn't sound right. That doesn't sound right. Hey, you want to do it for free? Go to National UFO Reporting Center.
Okay, that's where you
Org.
report sightings.
National
Yeah.
UFO Reporting Center.org. It's public. They put their public stuff up. Your sighting that you put up tonight, you probably won't see it till 2 weeks into the next month because it's about 2 weeks before they run it through a process and then they post it. Okay, but it's public data. That's how I get it. It's public data. And National UFO Reporting Center, New Fork, NUFORC.org, and they're free. And you can be as anonymous as you want. Please don't put fake stuff in there. They've got enough to deal with.
Yeah, please, friends. Yeah, don't do that.
The thing is, there's about 29 reporting sightings per day, 25 to 29 per day nationally. Okay, so they're getting that. They're getting at least 25 to 30 a day, day in, day out. Okay, and states like California, they're doing like 12 a day, unless there's something really special and then it jumps up and like that. And that's one of those things. Now, you were asking me about hot spots.
Yeah, I'm very interested in seeing
Okay.
if you can help me locate hotspots near my home state. Because
Okay.
guess what
That's
I
easy.
just got?
That's
I
easy.
just got
That's easy.
I just got a good enough telescope that I can do film and video through. That's decent enough quality, and I want to find some hotspots in my local area. And
Do you
see where I
think they're
can
going to hold
help.
still long enough for you to get them on the
I'm
telescope
hoping.
video?
I'm hoping, Miss Costa. I'm gonna try.
Oh, no. The thing is, they seem to have AI with telepathic capability, and they know the minute you look at them, they realize you're looking at them, and then they take off, or they wink out or whatever.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I've heard this argument from alien abductee people because anytime I hear that somebody's abducted by aliens, my thing, and especially when somebody says it happens every night or it happens once a week, my thing is always set up cameras, but, then they say, well, they don't show up if you set up the cameras. So who knows? Maybe they are aware when they're being observed.
Dr. Valet said that is sometimes a problem. They'd go out there and set up all their equipment, and they wouldn't show up. Start packing this away, and they show up. It's like they know.
Yeah,
So,
and Out of Mind's mentioning hotspots. Air
no,
above
not
military bases.
not hotspots above military bases.
No?
That's a fallacy. Okay, yes and no. See, back in the 70s, a lady did use the National UFO Reporting Center data, and she found a correlation to the major military bases. After the Cold War, a lot of bases were downgraded to reserve bases and National Guard bases, that type of thing. And only a handful became stayed active duty bases. Now, I interviewed as a journalist Lou Alessandro 2 or 3 times. He was the guy that ran the ATIP program at the Pentagon.
Sure, we're well aware, yeah.
And I asked him about this, and he basically said, really, they seem to be haunting our nuclear technology. They loiter around our bases where the advanced nuclear technology is. They loiter around the fleet where the advanced nuclear technology is. Okay, and that seems to be the case.
Yeah, it
Remember,
always
these
seems
things.
to be nuclear craft, like nuclear aircraft carriers are seeing these
Yeah,
things.
there's that. Plus, there's the nuclear weapons that are being carried on that thing is reserve weapons. Remember, nuclear weapons are not primary weapons, usually explosives. Nuclear weapons are considered a reserve weapon. Okay, a weapon
Well,
of
sure,
last
yeah.
resort.
Yeah,
Okay.
you don't want
Well, I
to
was in the military. That's what we called them. Okay. The deal is that while they do loiter around some of our bases and everything like this, by the way, and no, they don't loiter around the 55 nuclear power plants we got in the country. I had the street address and the county for every one of them. We ran them against the database. Nah. They don't hang out there. They're actually more interested in our polluted lakes, polluted rivers, dead coal mines, our waste areas, our brownfields. They're much more interested in that, and are also our unstable fault lines. They're really, really interested in that. And yes, they hang around big cities. But the majority of the sightings, even though there's a lot around the big cities because there's lots of people to see them, if you go out with the zip codes, because the zip code will take in maybe a few villages and towns outside of the city, but also take in a whole bunch of those unincorporated communities that are out
The
there.
smaller towns, yeah.
And that's where you start seeing that whole leisure time thing kick in. Because most sightings occur between 5:30 at night and 11:30 at night, with the peak of it happening between 8:30 at night and 10:30. 75% of the sightings happen between 5:30 at night to 7:30 at night, or I'm sorry, 11:30 at night. The other 17 hours of the day represent about 25% of the sightings. Who knew?
Yeah. So do you think it is there is something to the nuclear thing, but they're more interested in military craft? Because you said they're not interested in the nuclear power plants.
We have not seen any data that says they're hanging out there. Okay, that's the deal. The data doesn't. As they used to say in the CSI program, follow the evidence. The data doesn't point to this. Okay,
Okay.
but
Yeah, interesting. Because I had heard from, you just hear things, and I'm sure that I had heard that there was sightings or a lot of sightings near nuclear power plants.
I hear that all the
But
time
this is
too.
a
But the
common
numbers
belief
don't
that
back it
they're,
up.
yeah, this is a common belief that somehow they're attracted to nuclear sources or energy.
Okay, now we can go there for a minute. Think about
Sure.
this. We've had sightings around since before biblical times. Okay, Roman soldiers used to log these things into their watch reports. They've been around this a long time. But when we detonated 3 nukes back in 1945, suddenly in 1947 we're up to our butt in UFOs. Okay, and basically I think the attitude was, oh my gosh, the natives have a box of matches.
Yeah, I interviewed Stanton Friedman before, and he was fond of that saying, like, "Oh, the kids
That's where
got
I
the
got it.
matches."
I love that,
Yeah,
man. I really
yeah, the
did.
kids got the matches, and maybe this is something that we should be looking at because the kids got the matches now. And
And
certainly, as any civilization that develops nuclear technology could also develop spacefaring technology. This is again from Stanton Friedman. Nuclear rockets could get you to the nearby star systems that are not your own. So certainly that should be a cause for concern. If we can create nuclear bombs, we can also create nuclear rockets to go and visit nearby star systems. So maybe at that point we became a threat to them, or a possible threat worthy
yeah,
of monitoring, right?
yeah. The guy by the name Robert Haster did the books about UFOs and nukes.
UFOs and nukes, I have those, yeah.
And I saw a live presentation by him in 2017 at a MUFON conference. And if I ever had any doubts left in my mind, this was the smoking gun for me, because he was using real government reports mentioning these
Sure.
missile silos getting shut down. And then we started seeing video from some of these guys testifying, so to speak, at the National Press Club about this, former missile men. Okay. And so, yeah, I think they saved us from annihilating ourselves a couple of times back in the 80s, because we were real close. I mean, I was really sweating that Reagan was going to push the button one of these days, and
Yeah, I remember that time and being like, like, wow, we could all just die tomorrow if these two
yes,
countries don't, work out their differences, right?
yeah. So the big deal with the nukes, they seem to be very interested in it because we could quite literally destroy the planet. Now, I've had a lot of senior talk show hosts come to me and say, why are we getting all of this stuff around the bases, around the ships right now? All that stuff, they're letting themselves be seen. We know they can stealth it out. Why are they suddenly allowing us to see them on infrared and on radar and things like this, flying past our F-18s, playing games with them in the air? I think it's one of two things. Either ET is trying to push the situation so the government has to tell the rest of the civilization that these guys are around,
Interesting,
or
yeah.
we're so close to our ecological tipping point. But judging from the kind of weather we've had this year, I would say you think, we're so close to our tipping point ecologically that they may be taking the attitude, if you guys won't fix it, we're going to come there and help you and make you fix it. These planets like this are rare, even though life is
Yeah.
teeming throughout the universe. These kinds of
But
habitats
planets,
are rare.
yeah, but planets that can support I've heard people theorize that one of the reasons they have an interest in Earth is because planets that can support very complicated life forms like ours are rare.
Yeah.
They're out there, but they're rare. And with any rare resource, you don't want to waste that rare resource. You want to use it to, the benefit of all, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So, of all of this data that you're gathering, you probably have a pretty good take on is this sightings going to ramp up and continue to ramp up? Are we going to see more UFOs in the future?
I think we're going to continue. Well, if it stays at our normal cycle, we're going to ramp up for the next 4 or 5 years, and it's going to start ramping down again. Okay. Now, again, you were asking me about hot spots. People say, Cheryl, where's the hot spots? I'll say, do you have a particular state in mind? Do you have a particular time of year in mind? Do you know that we discovered that some of the UFO, or actually most of the UFO silhouettes have seasons? We only found that out with building this book. In fact, we're going to do a separate book just on that stuff.
Wait. So people see triangles during certain seasons. People see saucers during other seasons.
Yeah, you see them
See,
all
this
year,
is the
but
stuff.
they're peaking up in certain seasons. Some of them are only here really here in volume in the wintertime. Some of them are here only in the spring.
See,
Most of
this
them
is
are
the
here in the
benefit.
summertime.
This is the benefit of good data analysis because I've never heard that. And I'm sure, given the book and how much data it's packed with, you can do a chart, right? And see.
Yeah. Oh, I did
And
one the other
see.
day. I'll send it to you. I'll email
That's
it to you
fascinating.
after the show.
Yeah,
Now,
fascinating.
you want to hear what our next thing is going to be? You're going to love this.
Yeah, sure. I'm all
Okay.
ears.
Okay. Since we fixed all that city data and location data, it's two things. It's municipalities and locations. Joe's campground, Lover's Leap on such and such a mountain. There's locations that are non-governmental. We fixed all that. But if we printed out all the cities with sightings, all that location stuff, with the sighting information, not the write-ups about the sighting when Joe and Bob were out looking. No, just the sighting information with the dates. Okay, it would be about 1.5 feet thick. We figure it'd be about 60 centimeters. Okay, two or three Oxford dictionaries. So what we're going to do is we've come up with a rapid production process by building these reports, and tables are the time-consuming part. Building them into PDFs, and then you put them into something like Adobe Acrobat, and you just stack them up like blocks, and you got
Sure,
your
very
master.
familiar with that, boy. I did
Okay.
a lot of that kind of
That's
stuff.
why I was able to build this other book. When he actually put it together, Linda took a week of vacation off, so we had a weekend on either side of the vacation, and that week in the middle, I showed her all the printouts we'd already done. We laid them out on the floor, we laid them out on the bed, we put them on the dining room table, and she started saying, okay, these are going first, these are going second, that type of thing. She played editor and publisher and organized the book the way she wanted to see it presented. So we put all that stuff together. I just started pulling in PDFs. I assembled the book in less than 2 hours from all the PDFs I've been
Oh,
building
okay.
all
So
year
you guys
long.
have been building the building blocks, right? And then you can
Yeah.
just stack them up.
There's some
Interesting.
days you're sitting there working on it and say, God, I can't do numbers today. Let me work on the graphics instead.
Especially this book. What is it? It's a huge book. How many pages is in this book?
430.
430, yeah.
It's
Wow.
2.7 pounds, already credited with a concussion.
We want to stop. We want to stop and recognize M. Fisher with a kind and generous 7-pound donation. She really has the complete database in her memory, doesn't she? Amazing,
Wow,
great
wow.
show, Stephen. Yeah, thank you very much for your kindness, your generosity, and your support. It really does help us to. We're a viewer-supported show, so there's a money button down there.
Thank you.
Thank you for the super chat. Great.
So
And we had a great question that I don't want to miss.
don't miss it.
Moody Mongol asked this. He says that the tritium used in gas form to boost the bomb's effect degrades every 15 or 20 years and needs to be replaced in all missiles. Do you know, Cheryl, do UFO lights correspond to these refitting times?
They may. I don't know what the schedules are for that refitting,
Well, that's
so
something that we could
I
check
can't
into and get
correlate.
back to you. Maybe, yeah,
Yeah,
that's
maybe.
interesting. That it would be interesting to see if they are sort of, you know, more sightings when they're doing the refit. Yeah,
That's
interesting.
possible. That's possible. Okay, here's the deal with what we're going to do. Couldn't do it all in one book, so we're going to publish 50 individual state books, right down to the municipal or local level,
Wow, that's amazing,
with their
and that's
sightings
great
over
because then
20
people
years.
could get the book for their state that they want the
Well,
information
yeah.
for. Yeah.
Imagine what it would look like a line. If you got onto one page, it would go 2001 to 2020 across the top, and then if you saw your county and then maybe your city, all the shapes that were seen in that 20-year window would be lined right up there with how many numbers, how many of them were seen for every one of those years. Okay. And
Interesting.
so we're going to build 50 individual state books. Then we're going to build 29 individual shapes only books. One book for every single shape, because these books are all going to be between 250 and 380 pages, because we
Yeah,
got
can you
that much
imagine putting them
data.
all in one book, right? Yeah.
Yeah, we couldn't. It's going to be
Yeah.
it's going to be it'd be a stack as tall as I am. So basically, what we'll end up with is about 80 or 90 books on this stuff. It will be the largest compilation. I'm sorry, it'd be the largest collection of compiled UFO data ever published in human history, sampling a 20-year period. And that's when Linda and I are going to retire.
Wow. Well, yeah, what a work to retire with, though. And then you leave behind this legacy of all of this. Like I said, I'm such a data person, and there seems to be such a lack of it in this field that I sure wanted to have you on and pick your brain about all of this stuff.
Can we talk to Lake Erie? There's a question there about Lake Erie.
Yeah, yeah. Somebody
Okay,
was talking
okay.
about the Lake Erie sightings.
Okay,
Yeah.
it's the Lake Erie effect. Okay, the Lake Erie and the Niagara Frontier. Okay, remember I talked about water being a driver. Along 30% of the sightings in New York State follow along the St. Lawrence Seaway, up above
I've heard
Ogdensburg,
that before. Yeah.
down across through Lake Ontario, down through the Buffalo area in the middle of Lake Erie. Okay, now for years people said that next to the Hudson Valley, Lake Erie was the other big major ground zero for UFOs. And that was very true based on the data that people understood at that time. In 2015, when we did that sampling, just kind of playing around with New York State, and I was publishing articles, we found out that there was a cluster in Monroe County, which is essentially the Rochester area on Lake Ontario, and they had almost as many sightings as the Lake Erie area did. And people, the experts, the old timers were looking and says, "Wow, we didn't know there was a Lake Ontario effect. Holy God, you know!" And the other thing was, we found out something else from the Canadian side. There have been folk stories since the colonial era that said that there's a civilization that lives under Lake Ontario.
Well,
Okay,
that's pretty
well,
interesting.
okay, so bottom line in New York State, people said, well, then what's the hot spot? Is it Lake Erie or is it the Hudson Valley? And I said, no, it's Suffolk County, Long Island, Montauk Point.
Montauk. I'm not a big believer in Montauk, though. I don't know. I've been there, and I thought there's nothing here.
Okay, but there is water on both sides. You got the Sound and you
Yes,
got the
but, so
Atlantic
you're right.
Ocean, and that's a major driver.
And also, people are asking which you keep referring to Linda, and I believe you're referring to your co-author Linda Miller Costa.
She is
correct?
my wife.
Yeah. Okay.
Two lady
Okay.
household here, you know.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah.
She's got a
People thought
wife
you
and
were-
I've got a wife. It works out great, you know.
Reemsey here with a $5 super sticker. Thank you for your kindness, your generosity, and your support. And Lord Ludicrous Plaid with the question: are nuclear waste sites one of the most visited? How does waste compare to active missiles and power plants on visits versus people pollution?
Okay,
That's a good question.
I went to nuclear power school when I was in the Navy, and the amount of time it takes for that those very hot, radioactively hot rods to degrade, and by half-life it's like 25,000 years. So we're going to be living with this waste for a long time. Yeah, they're interested in that as well.
Very interesting. Let me thank everybody for the super chats. We're a viewer-supported television show and audio podcast. So if you want to support us, there's a money button down there, and you too can throw money at us, and you will receive our gratitude and our thanks for your kindness, your generosity, and support. Thank you, guys. Thank you very much.
You got some generous listeners. I used to have a talk radio program, and nobody would give us money.
Yeah, it's great. And you know what I always say? I always say it's this or Taco Bell, right? That's what I'm. Those are my choices. So I'd much prefer to do this. I think that we're doing some important work here, and I like, I haven't seen you on any other show. Maybe I just am not watching enough UFO shows.
I've done a bunch of them since the second week of May.
Yeah, but I think it's
the
so
mailing that you
important.
saw. But
I think it's so important that we get people like you instead of some of these storytellers that don't have any evidence, or this is a complete 180 to what a lot of what's out there, because I truly believe that having access to all of this data gives you a great deal of insight into things that nobody's talking about, this kind of stuff. And why not, right?
Let me give you a thought here, okay? Now, as we were getting done with the book, numerous people in my life, the guy over at Staples, different people who I interacted a lot with this stuff, they would say to me, well, when you were working on the book, you did take out all the, this is a quote, I got this almost regularly. You did take out the nuts, kooks, nuts, and crackpots, right? And it's like that line from the movie Amadeus when the emperor comes into Mozart and says, you got a beautiful symphony there, just take out a few notes and it'll be perfect, that kind of thing. And the deal is what ones do I take out? I don't take them out. I kept them all. Statistically, we can write some off. Okay, so let me show you how I do this as a chalk talk when I do presentations. You'll love this. Okay, we got 167,632 sightings over the past 20 years. I say, Dr. Villay says 80% noise. MUFON says 70% noise. Linda and I, we came back with a number from two different criterias that we used, and came back with 60%, 68%, 70%, something like that. So let's go with 70% is noise. So we take 30% right off the top and say, okay, 30% is what we want. 30% of that 167,632 is about 50,000. Divide that by 20 years. It gives you about 2,500 per year average. Divide that 2,500 a year by 12 months. That gives us a number of 208, 210, something like that, depending on how you're rounding the decimal point. Okay. Now, what does that 210 mean? That's 210. If we're saying this 30% of the genuine deal, that 210 a month for 240 months of the last 20 years are genuine. And if all 50 states were equal, they're not. But if all 50 states were equal, if you take that 210 and divide it by 50, you come up with 4. Okay? What does 4 mean? It means that if all states were equal in the last 20 years, then every state in the union had 4 genuine ET events a month for the past 20 years. Wow. That's still a significant number when you throw 70% out the window.
Yeah, and like you said, you can throw a small portion out as maybe not credible sightings.
We write off about, we would normally say about 5 to 7% statistically.
Wow. Yeah, it's interesting. And is that because they're misidentifications or not credible witnesses, or
no?
Is there any criteria you use to write those off, or you just consider some of the statistical data is going to be
just assume all of the above that you just mentioned.
Okay.
All the above. Okay. I like to write off the 3.5% myself right off the bat. Those the 3.5% are the people who did not fill out the name of the city or the location when they made the report.
Okay.
And we had to write in unspecified, and we had to, for every single state, we had to assign it to an unknown county.
Well, that's very interesting. So, we've talked about all of the this little known. Is there any other patterns that you're seeing in the data that people are not maybe not aware of that you found interesting?
Uh, okay, we've seen certain shapes show up, and then other shapes show up with them. In fact, when back in 2014 to 17, when all the sightings were going in a toilet, everybody said, "Oh, that's terrible, that's terrible." And I had one researcher look at me and say, "Oh, yeah, it's terrible." I said, "What if I told you three shapes are on the increase?" And it seems like when these guys come to town, everybody else vacates. And they said, "What shapes were them?" The Saturn shape is the mothership. The teardrop shape seems to be a high, heavy-duty shuttle, and the egg shape seems to be a scout ship. And you see them in frequencies that would be appropriate for being auxiliary craft to a mothership. And those motherships, that Saturn-shaped ship sort of looks acorn-shaped. That's what the Japan Airlines guy encountered back in 1986. It's a half a mile wide. But
Wow,
we
yeah,
only
that's got to
see
be a
about
big.
40 of them
And
a
you know
year.
what? The Kecksburg crash was supposed to be an acorn-shaped craft as
Yeah,
well,
but
but that was
that
a
thing
small
that
one, the
that was
size of a
that was
Volkswagen. Yeah,
the size of a bus. Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
VW bus, that kind of thing.
VW bus. You're right. That's how I'd heard it described. The size of a Volkswagen bus. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, Kecksburg's also in Pennsylvania, so I've been there, and there's not much to see. It's a sleepy little town, and there's this monument they built like a replica. Then you can just search Kecksburg UFO, and you can see what I'm talking about.
Now, can I
Interesting.
share one thought about what's been like to be two gay women coming out with the
Sure,
statistics?
we are
The,
big supporters here
the
of
UFO,
gay rights and trans rights here. Everybody's welcome here.
the community tended to be dominated, excuse the expression, by white guys, and the
White old
problem,
guys.
white old guys, yes, and the problem was what we ran up against was there was this attitude. Well, you didn't vet all that in first book, 121,000, right? You didn't vet all those. I said, how are we going to vet that? Statistically, we can write off
Yeah,
7%.
you
It's
better
not a
call
big deal.
five a day. You'll be there for 60 years.
I don't have a
Yeah.
time machine to go back to 2001,
Yeah.
So there was that. Plus, there's the other attitude we get a lot on a number of shows. They'll say, "Well, you aren't field investigators," and like I told you before the show, we're a couple of old ladies. We don't do cow patties, we don't do ticks, we don't do barbed wire, and we don't do all of that stuff of marching around out in Mrs. Murphy's barnyard looking for UFO evidence. We do it like Indiana Jones. We do our expeditions in the library, okay, with our computer terminals.
Interesting. Yeah, and I don't blame you because I've done some things where like when I went to Kecksburg, I wanted to see the crash site and I had to go crawling through the woods, like literally crawling through the woods, and it was, not a pleasant experience. So I don't blame you. What did you say earlier? You said that it all starts in the library,
Yeah,
right?
yeah. Um,
Yeah.
okay, when I was doing my newspaper column, I used to look up famous sightings in some cases, and sometimes I would literally have to go to a library and find old books about UFO sightings, maybe published 15, 20 years ago or something like that, to find interesting cases. And again, as a journalist, every week you got to write something. And that was some of the stuff we used to do. And I found some very intriguing stories here and there. So that's pretty much the deal. We're doing it with data. After the first book came out, I had 3 years worth of time to play, a lot of rainy afternoons and nothing. Once you retire, what people say, wow, being retired must be fun. After about 3 months, if you don't have grandkids, which I don't, it's sort of like it's like Groundhog Day, 4-day weekend from hell that never ends.
Yeah, I don't know. I hear people say that, and me, I would find things to occupy myself. I'd start building things, or I don't know what I would do if I had all the time in the world. But I'd find something to keep me busy. But I
Well,
guess for
that's
you, the
what keeps me
research,
busy,
yeah, the research.
So
Well, God bless you for having the time and the energy to put together such a
now
data-driven
people
book.
have
Sure.
people are saying to me, "Well, wait a minute. You said you're going to do 80 books, and it's been about 18 months." Okay, actually, we had to stop everything about now because we're packing everything up because we're being moved to Cleveland, Ohio. Okay, and we'll be out there around right after Halloween, first week or so of November. So once we get reestablished, get our whole house put together, we can jump back in and work on the books again. Once we get these books done, um, what's Cheryl going to do? Well, Linda's got her things that she likes to do. She likes to haunt museums. Me, I'm into live action role play gaming. So I'm going to go join the local LARP group and get out my rubber sword and my hooded cape and go chase dragons and monsters and things, and write. I write those kinds of things too. So that's what the plan is to actually enjoy that aspect of my retirement, make more costuming. In fact, you know what we're doing with our new apartment? Instead of the living room being a living room, we're putting the TV and the furniture we would normally sit in for that kind of thing, a couple big lazy boy recliners kind of thing. We're putting them in the master bedroom, and we're making that into a TV parlor. The bed is going into just a regular small bedroom just to sleep in, and we're taking that big 25 by 15 foot front room, and we're making it into a studio. One end will be my writing nest area. At the other end, every piece of sewing equipment we have, that's Linda's area. And in the middle, we're going to have a big, huge projects table. Okay. And it could be a gaming table if we want,
This is like that Step Brothers movie. More room for activities.
You betcha. That's exactly the plan. And
I'm real big on that. Like, I don't know. I have 2 kids. So, like, my whole living room is just filled with, a dumpster full of toys. But if I had the choice, I would do something similar. But I have a basement for that with all my.
Well, Linda and I were always fighting with each other about who got to take over the dining room table to cut out a pattern or something, on a fabric or a costume or something. So we said, look, if not now, when? Why don't we just build a huge studio and just have it out all the time?
Yeah, and do the things that you enjoy. Anthony Purcell had an interesting question, and he's saying that you should make all your data available to the public on a website, not a book. So I wanted you to address that because it's a valid comment or criticism, perhaps.
Okay. This is first thing. My intellectual property attorney says no, absolutely not.
Okay. I get that. Yeah.
Okay, but the other problem with that is websites are ephemeral. Okay, they're never quite the same the next day, kind of thing. Books are around. There's still, I've got 4 or 5 old phones sitting over here in a box in the attic that I can't even turn on anymore. That got information in there that I would dearly love to download and get off those phones. But, we're still finding Beethoven's scores in people's attics to this day. Okay. Paper is forever in a sense. Now, that's one thought. The other thought is people are saying, well, why aren't you giving it away for free on the internet? And I said to a number of people who were haranguing me on the first book about that, and I said, are you willing to come over and mow my lawn all summer? Are you willing to come over and paint my back porch? And he said, well, no. Said, why do you expect me to give away? Why do you expect me to give away my intellectual work and property? I've got between these 2 books, we've got 6,000 hours of logged effort. Now, people say, why would you know that many hours? We're both former government contractors. We know how to log time.
Yeah, you got to keep track of that. And by the way, I just want to tell everybody, the book's $25, and for a book with to me, it's worth every penny because I want to comb through this data and see if I can spot patterns, and look at the data for my state, and and it really is, I think, to anybody interested in UFOs, a desk reference. Look at this big monster. Oh, the pink. Why is it pink?
Pink. Because we wanted, if we ended up, but first thing, it was built by a couple of women, which is a lot of pushback in the UFO community for years. The other thing was we dedicated it to the first woman who started collecting data back in 1952, Coral Lawrence. She founded APRO, which was the predecessor to MUFON.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I've heard of her.
Okay,
yeah.
Dedicated. So women basically built this book in this case. And the other thing is, if we do end up in front of Congress testifying, we wanted to be able people to know that if you see the congressman up there on television flipping through a book and it's bright pink, you could flag in an aircraft with it. It's our book.
That's pretty interesting. So you want to be able to spot your own book if people were on television with it or
Yeah,
something
yeah,
like
yeah,
that, looking at it, right? Like
yeah.
that one time, Hillary Clinton famously got, she had a UFO book, and somebody did it like a close up and found that she was reading a UFO book. So that's pretty interesting, right?
Yeah. So
So you
it's
talked about what's next for you is you're going to be publishing these state by state sort
yeah.
of guides, one for each state, right?
One for we're going to have the tables for every state. One of the things with the pink book we did, which was, as Linda said, was our secret sauce. We actually broke down each of the shapes and did it by year, did it by did charts for it by year, by month, by hour. Okay, so we actually did charts on every. No one had ever done this with the shapes. We knew they were up there. We knew there were a certain number of them, but nobody ever actually started looking at the patterns of when they're here. That type of thing, and that's when we found out there's seasons. And George Knapp out in Las Vegas, he went, huh? Really? I was like, yeah, there are. So there's still a lot hiding there in the data we haven't found yet, but we're going to get all these books generated. We got a 20-year sample, which is a huge investment in intellectual knowledge, and we want to get it out there so everybody can get it. And by publishing, people will say, why did you go out and get a standard publisher? By publishing through Amazon, we get a little bit more control of it. Also, Amazon is considered a global distributor, so we've sold this book all over the world. In fact, we think the first one bought in Europe looks like in both cases looks like it was bought by the Vatican.
The Pope's reading your pink book on
Well, at least
UFOs,
the
right?
Vatican Library is one or the other.
No, the Vatican Library is one of the largest in the world, especially. What do they have? 10 miles of underground tunnels?
I
Or
would give
something?
my eye teeth to go into that
I
place. I
know.
really
Imagine
would.
the secrets that they're keeping in that vault. I'm going to do a whole show on that sometime. Yeah.
There you go. So that's the biggest deal that we can tell you right now is we've been studying this stuff. We're putting the data out so people can have it. We're going to make it down easy for everybody to have their home state on their shelf if they want. And
Yeah,
that's it.
I definitely want my home state and be able to try to find you know, the hot spots, right?
Well, okay, if you want to go by pure numbers, Bucks County.
And that's where I live. Isn't that funny? And I
Yeah.
didn't know that when I moved here. I just
Yeah.
happened to move here.
Actually, I'll
There's
tell
some
you.
famous Bucks County cases. One was on the UFO. What is that UFO show with John Ventry? The MUFON one. UFO
Hangar One.
Yeah, that case in Bucks County is interesting, and that is 10 minutes from my house.
Let me give you the top 10 counties in Pennsylvania. Okay.
There you go. That'd be great. Yeah.
Okay, now I'm going to say this is going to sound strange, and I'm not insulting, but it's an observation. Okay. Okay, Allegheny County is number one county in Pennsylvania. They had 636 in the 20 years. Okay. But funny thing about Allegheny County, I had the most misspelled cities in the state were Allegheny County cities.
Hmm.
Funny how that worked out. Okay, Bucks County is number 2. Philadelphia County is number 3. And yes, she's wearing an Eye of Horus. I am a priestess of Isis. So yes, of course, I wear this sort of thing.
That's interesting.
Chester County is number 5 with 283. Westmoreland County, Unknown County, Lancaster, Berks, York, Lehigh, Leshier, Northampton County. You get the drift. Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Allentown, Erie, Reading, Harrisburg, Lancaster, York, Levittown, Bethlehem are the top 10. They'll give
Yeah,
you the
they're all
idea.
very close to me. So that's very interesting to me. Very, very interesting. And it's good to see this look through the data lens for a change instead of the storyteller fairy tale lens that seems to be so prevalent now. It makes me sad.
It does.
But
It bothers me sometimes a great deal, especially when I was a journalist. We did our best to make sure we had an accurate story. I couldn't tell you who because of the stigma issue, and like I said, I couldn't tell you why because we don't know why, but we could tell you what, when, and where, and we tried to be very straight about it. And we tried to make. By the way, I'm not a pure journalist. My degree is in entertainment writing, so I have a little bit more slack to kind of punch it up a little bit. But the story was always accurate. The setting wasn't.
yeah, no, you got to do the best you can with what you're given, and some of these some of these databases, right? They were not going to be releasing names and addresses of the people.
Yeah, the stigma was just too big a deal. It really is. There's places right now that won't talk to me because I'm that kook that wrote that newspaper column, that type of thing. In fact, the other newspaper in town and the 2 radio stations and the TV station won't talk to me because
Well, I would think that your military background and background working for Lockheed Martin makes you somewhat more credible, wouldn't it?
you would have thought so. I'm a 2 military service veteran. I'm a
And you
combat
said
veteran.
somebody said you did data security for Lockheed Martin?
I did well, okay.
That's
I did a lot
interesting.
I
So
did.
maybe
I
you
did.
know this. Are they working on aliens over there? You
No,
would know.
No, I
Don't
wouldn't.
lie to us.
No, I wouldn't. I really
They
wouldn't.
got some aliens, right?
No, I wouldn't. No.
Back engineered craft? No?
I couldn't tell you.
Couldn't tell us. See? That means
I
they
don't
have
know.
them.
I don't know.
No, I'm teasing you.
People
I'm
ask
just
me, have
teasing
you
you.
ever been to Skunk Works? I said, no, I never had the opportunity, I pretty much worked the Capital District. It was Gaithersburg, Maryland, Rockville, Maryland, Bethesda, Maryland. I serviced the computers from first, second, and third level help desk for headquarters district. And that's what I did for bulk of my last 20 years there. Now, the first 10 years I was in the company, somebody figured out I had gone to film school, and they asked me to start making industrial films for them, which I did. I made about 70 industrial films. And, but that was a very short-lived thing because then somebody else looked at my resume and personnel and said, holy crap, she's got a submarine background and she knows radar. We need her on this project, so.
Oh, that's very interesting. And somebody in the live chat, if anybody has any
Let me
comments or questions.
Let me qualify that when I say radar. Okay, I can
Okay.
tell you this. I was a senior electronic warfare specialist in the Navy. I climbed telephone poles in Vietnam in the Air Force. People shoot at you on those things. But I was a senior electronic warfare specialist. I was accustomed to analyzing data and peculiar observations, both electronic and optical. But beyond that, I can't tell you what I did.
Okay, and if anybody has any questions, please get them
Hudson
in there.
Valley
We're
sightings.
wrapping things
Hudson
up,
Valley
yeah.
sightings. Okay. Hudson Valley. Yes, it is a hotbed, but it's not ground zero like everybody will tell you. Oh, Hudson Valley is the core of UFOs in New York State. They have a lot of them down there, but not these days. Okay. Back in the 70s, the place was crawling with UFOs. These days, not so much.
And Lord Ludicrous Plaid with another kind and generous $1.99 super chat, trying to get their question in. And I'm sure that they're referring to your time at Lockheed Martin. Did you see any cool documents or pics?
No.
No.
No, honest. Never saw anything like that. In fact, if I had classified material, I can tell you the stuff I did have was boring stuff. It was usually technical specs. Okay? And
Yeah,
so,
and that's not very exciting. Yeah. Yeah, but I want to thank Lord Ludicrous Plaid for his kindness, his generosity, and support. Remember, there's a money button down there. We're a viewer-supported show. Thank you for your kindness and helping us to praise the cash.
can I
Thank
give
you
you
very
one
much.
last? I really do have to go to bed because
Yeah, I can talk to you for another 5
I'm
hours
dragging.
if
I
you
know.
let
I
me,
could.
and I get that,
Normally,
yeah.
I could, but
No.
we were up late
Listen,
last night.
thank you very much for doing this. I really
I've got
appreciate
one
it.
more for you. After the UAP report came out a couple of weeks ago, I had reporters calling me up. Hey, what do you think of the 144 sightings they had in 20 years in the Navy? I said I got 167,632.
Yeah, that's pretty funny. Yeah.
But the deal was, we decided to go after it, and what we did was I put together a briefing package for the Senate Intel Committee, which happens to be Senator Rubio's group. He's one of the chairs, and we put together one for the House Intel Select Committee on Intel. Okay, and those packages were about 5 pounds apiece, and it was our book plus additional printouts. Senator Rubio, we gave him the state of Florida printed out every shape that was seen in their state. Remember, it was 11,000, okay, over 20 years. But it was printed out by zip code, and then all the shapes that were seen in that zip code over 20 years. And the printout was an inch and a half thick. Wow. And we shipped it down to him. And haven't heard anything. But about a week ago, I was walking through my apartment complex. I happened to look down. I was out the hall and looked out in the parking lot, and there were 6 law enforcement cars parked behind my car. Okay, sheriff's department, the county, the county sheriffs, the townships had 3 cars out there. There was a state cop out there. I'm going, oh my God, Rubio's team's coming after me. I didn't know what to think. Turned out there was a drug deal going down, and somebody called it in, and it completely locked off our parking lot.
That's funny.
But
Yeah,
when
something
I
like that
first saw
happened
the cars, I'm going, oh my God.
Something crazy like that happened to me. I was at the cabin and it was like 1 o'clock in the morning, and I know a cop knock when I hear one. So somebody's not, and I'm in the middle of the woods, so I know the only person that would knock on my door is my one close by neighbor, and he wouldn't knock like this. They were knocking like bang bang. And I answered the door, and I just about got tackled. They just walked right in, and they were serving a warrant on me. And I'm like, I'm not the guy. You got the wrong guy. It turned out there was somebody a few more miles up the dirt road in the woods, and they were serving a warrant on him. So after I showed them my ID, they left. But nobody wants cops at their cabin at 1 o'clock in the morning. Yeah.
No.
So you have poured through all this UFO data. I think this is a great question to close with. Do you believe that UFOs are extraterrestrial, having looked at all of this data? What's your take?
Okay, no, extraterrestrial is a big word. Extraterrestrial means not of this terrestrial ground. Okay, are they from other planets? Maybe. Are they from another galaxy far, far away? Maybe. Are they from interdimensionals? Very probably. There's a lot of evidence to suggest they're interdimensional, especially from the concept that when we set off our nukes and our nuke testing, yeah, it may have only looked like we blew up a bunch of desert sand, but we don't know what it did in subdimensional areas. We may have blown whole worlds up for all we know. We don't know. And there's been suggestions that was what the case was, that we're doing big damage when we did this.
There could be a ripple effect from
exactly
a nuclear explosion here could ripple into other dimensions and
exactly
somehow cause harm.
Plus, there's the politics issue that they don't want us to get off this rock with nuclear weapons. Okay, there's that attitude. So are they extraterrestrial? They are definitely from someplace else, but not from here. Now, I lived in a Buddhist monastery for 7 years, so the Buddhist yogi is going to tell you, okay, the universe is teeming with life, and we're connected to it. We're all connected to all beings everywhere, everywhen. Okay, and if you don't believe that, fine, you don't have to believe it. But trust me, from somebody who's been in that environment to touch it, so to speak, we're connected to everybody, everywhere, every time period, and we're all concurrent. It just perception is that we're in different times, but we're all concurrent. Trust me. But so, are there these other beings out there? Yeah, they're out there. They're here too. Okay, and all this idea of paranormal stuff, people say, oh yeah, well, there's a dowsing over here, there's ghosts over here, there's UFOs over here. It's all one phenomena. It's just different flavors of the phenomena. These are my fingers. That's one flavor of the phenomena of Cheryl. This is my nose. That's a different flavor of Cheryl. My mouth is a bigger, noisier version of Cheryl. Okay, but they're all the same phenomena. Okay, so that's the deal. In fact, the suns and all the galaxies are nuclear. Well, yeah, of course they are.
Yeah. Well, I think that's an interesting thing to think about and ponder. So I want to thank you for taking the time to do this. I want to encourage everybody once again. 1 second, let me share my screen here. There we go. So this is the book, UFO Sightings Desk Reference. And I can't...
Now that's the white version. The pink
one. We have
one.
the pink version, yeah.
Okay, and then we have the pink version. That's the newest one right there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I want the pink one. I won't mistake it for another book, right?
Right.
Let me get that one up on the screen just so that
there it is. Yeah.
A good enough plug here. Oh, there we go. There we go.
And I'll tell you what, when we start releasing the individual state books, I will get a hold of you, and I'll make sure Pennsylvania gets into the production stack early, and we'll get a hold of you, and we'll make sure we talk about Pennsylvania.
Sure. Great. Well, I can't thank you enough, so I'm going to throw you out of here. I hope that you will come back again and talk to us once again.
Anytime. Maybe I
And
can get Linda to come with me next time.
yeah, that would be exciting. I
I
think this
warn
is
you though. I warn you though. She is a scientist. So I warned one other talk host, and he got her on. I warned him in advance. She shoots from the hip with two machine guns. She's a very
my kind of
different
lady, though.
conversation, right?
Reminds me of my wife.
She's
She's
former
5 foot
hippie.
tall. My wife's
Yeah,
5
so
foot
is
tall
mine.
and 98 pounds, and I'm terrified of her.
Mine's 5 foot tall, and she's a former hippie.
You gotta watch those little chicks. Those are the scary ones.
Okay. Okay.
All right, I'm gonna throw you out of here. I appreciate your time. I'm just gonna knock you out of the stream and do a quick. Well, we're gonna do a wrap up and maybe give some time for afterthought and discussion with the live chat. But I appreciate you being here.
Bye,
Thanks
everybody.
very much
Thank you for
doing
having
this.
me. Thank you.
All right, bye bye. All right, great friends. So what an interesting conversation, and this reminds me that I really do need to stop always looking on the dark side of this thing and look for the good people who I do believe I could say are doing good or important work that will move this forward. Any comments or questions for me, please put them in the live chat, or we're going to be bouncing out of here very, very shortly. So, I want to thank my guest tonight. Let me get the banner down. Yeah. And I also want to remind you to please make sure, I got to do that YouTube pitch. It's sort of required, right? And that would be to remind everybody there's a few ways that you could support our show. The first way is by throwing money at me. We have a Patreon. Just search for Stephen Cambion. The link is in the About section. It's as little as $1 a month. We give a backstage view of some of the stuff that we're working on. I'm doing this screen test for our new character, Richard Doscam, this week. You'll get to take a look at that before it's made public, and we do a public show with it. I do an audio journal. I keep calling it an audio journal. It used to be an audio journal. We do a video journal all about the show every single month on Patreon. That's one of the Patreon benefits. And I upload a few songs a month of my music. A lot of people have commented on the music of the show. My music with vocals and singing in it is a project called Dreams in the Dark. And we share a few of those songs. I'm working on a new album, but the Patreon people are getting the album piece by piece for free. And also there's the money button. You can throw money at us through a super chat or PayPal donation. All those links are in the About section of our channel, and in every video description there is links there. You can also buy me a coffee, but it's really buy me a beer since I'm not a coffee drinker. That's the first way to support our show here. We really do appreciate and value everybody's support. First of all, if you send us, I'm going to check in with the PayPal right now. If you send us a PayPal donation, just put in the About section, or excuse me, add a note. When you send a PayPal donation, add a note, and you can write anything that you want to us, and we read it on air here. Okay? And no, we haven't had any of those since the last time we read them. And if you send in a super chat, we read every single super chat, and we thank everybody tremendously. Somebody commented tonight, asked where the cash clown was, and boy, that's a whole story. I'm going to be as brief as possible because I don't want to say too much about that situation, except here's what I'll say. Another show host said something like, I'm exploiting children for using my son in my show, and that's against YouTube's terms of service, and somebody should report my show. And this is I don't know what that guy's problem is. Bad blood, I guess. And part of that's my fault. I made some disparaging comments about having this person hosting somebody that's using murderers and child molesters as sources for alien stories, and not even, don't even ask her any questions like, great, you're talking about this guy in a secret space program, but isn't he a convicted murderer? Great, you're talking about this other story. Isn't that person that you got that story from a court-martialed child molester? And most importantly, this conspiracy land wackadoo pushed the fake stories about the tragic suicide of Mark McCandlish. We've covered that here previously. There's 3 videos. All I'm going to tell you is that was just a tragic suicide. So any of these nutters who are out there telling people that the men in black murdered him, he knew too much about alien reproduction vehicles, all this garbage. And by the way, making money shoveling that garbage. So, yeah, I said something like, that's not true. The stuff about Mark is not true. I talked to the coroner's office. I talked to the investigating officer. I have the real story. But this other show host decided to just let her sit there and lie about a tragic man's suicide. So, sorry, not sorry. I said that this is wackadoo. And I guess in retaliation, they can't attack my investigative work. They can't. We got the goods. The whole Mark McCandlish story, we did 3 shows on it. I talked to everybody that I could that was involved with that investigation into his suicide at the local level. I talked to the coroner's office. I talked to the police department. I talked to the investigating officer. I talked to many of Mark McCandlish's friends and family. All of them refute these wackadoo conspiracy land stories that are going around. So they can't attack my investigative skills or the truth that we present here. So what does the guy do? He says, I'm exploiting my own son. And by the way, my son wanted to help with the show. My son wanted to learn about earning money, and I'm teaching him that. I don't think we're doing anything wrong. I have read and checked into the terms of service myself, and it appears that we are completely and totally, fully in compliance. His statement was that I can't have a child on an adult show. But according to YouTube, I can, as long as I'm not exposing him to, anything harmful or nudity or adult language or anything. And of course I'm not. I film him dressed up like a clown saying praise the cash. He loved being on the show. He's so proud, right? He goes and finds the shows somehow on Amazon Music or on YouTube, and he jumps up and down, excited as can be, every time he sees himself on my show. I'm not going to apologize for including my son, but it's important that I be very clear in that just out of an abundance, I don't think we're doing anything wrong, and as I read the terms of service, we're not. But just out of an abundance of caution, I'm not using them. I've reviewed the terms of service. I have letters into YouTube support just to clarify this issue that we're okay. And also, I have a friend who actually works at YouTube, an old friend. I don't speak to him very often, but I've reached out to him, and he will be able to clarify for me that we are 100% in compliance with YouTube terms of service and YouTube child safety guidelines by using my son in a bumper thanking people for the super chats. Once I've done that, we'll put them right back in. But just out of an abundance of caution, I wanted to not use them. And I just want to tell that other show host, if you want to attack me, go ahead. But don't attack my child who's just trying to help me with my show. That's ridiculous, and it really shows what kind of a person you are. Now, I have to explain to my son that he can't be on my show for a while until we nail this issue down and make sure that we're 100% in compliance. And my son cried, so I don't know what to say except where I'm from, it's one thing to attack a man, but when you attack his children, what do you think's going to happen? But listen, I'm really trying to stay in my Zen zone and just forgive it. I will forgive stupid comments from stupid people who, by the way, he's wrong about that. I believe he's wrong, 100% wrong. And certainly wrong about the conspiracy land nutters he's hosting. And, whatever. I forgive, but I don't forget. And ask anybody that knows me. Don't piss me off. You make my son cry, you're going to piss me off. You did piss me off, and you wouldn't like me when I'm angry. And we're going to leave it at that. But, like I said, I will forgive, but I won't forget. So we're looking into the issue. Once we are 100% certain, we'll put those bumpers back in. Yeah, and I'm upset that my son is upset, right? Because we had more things planned. He wants to dress up like a zombie and do a bumper for the show and a few other things that we were talking about planned, right? Oh, that girl Jessica, that'll make him feel better. I will tell him, and I'm certain. I'm 99.9% certain that we're fully in compliance. But just like I said, just out of an abundance of caution, if this other show host is telling people, and let me be clear, he didn't tell people to report me. He implied that somebody should, or he said, what did he say exactly? He said, it'd be a shame if somebody reported him to YouTube for that, wouldn't it? Or something like that, which to me is encouraging people to report me. And another thing that I would just like to say is the first rule of YouTube, it's an unwritten rule, is you do not threaten another YouTube content creator's channel. You just don't do it. There's some things you don't do on YouTube, and one of them is to threaten a fellow YouTube content creator's channel. I don't care what this guy does. I would never threaten his channel or tell people to report his channel. If he wants to host wackadoos that are telling alien fairy tales on his show to get clicks and views, good for him. Good for him. But any perceived credibility that guy had is circling the drain just with that. And I'm sure that there's going to be more wackadoo nutters telling fairy tales on his show. But here's the thing. It's like that serenity prayer. I have to accept the things I can't change. I can confront people when they're helping a conspiracy land nutter profit off the tragic suicide of a man. He said I protest it. Okay, well I can protest, but I can't change people's opinion, and I'm not going to. I'm not going to, I got to just learn to accept things, right? Anthony Purcell says Cash Clown will be missed. Well, he'll be back shortly as soon as we're sure. That we're good. And I believe that we are. Yeah, Lord Ludicrous Plaid. We were giving donations for him so that he can buy toys. Yeah, great. But that's another whole issue because according to YouTube, like I said, this whole thing is a can of worms. But I'm going to do whatever we have to do to be in compliance. And somebody's wondering who I'm talking about. I'm not even mentioning the guy because I'm not punching down and I don't want to encourage anybody to check out his channel. Sorry. Yeah. No, it's not Mikey Horn, but Mikey Horn is sending his hordes of, I think it's mostly him. There's all these sock puppet accounts telling me what a terrible person I am for posting that clip from my former radio show where Mikey Horn is citing a convicted child molester as a source that an alien lent Billy Meyer a laser gun. Yeah, there are thousands of cute kid videos on YouTube, but I don't know that they're on adult shows. This show is an adult show, so there may be an issue there. I really don't think that there is. We have reached out to both YouTube through emails, YouTube support, and also through a friend of mine that actually works for YouTube. I'm waiting for him to get back to me. Old friend owes me a few favors. I'm going to have him look into the issue, look at what we did, and tell me if there's a problem or not. And I'm like I said, I'm 99.9% sure it's not. I'm 99.9% sure we are not in any jeopardy of getting reported or stricken for doing that, but it is what it is. UFO Watchdog is here and says, that clip is hilarious. Horn was in full meltdown mode. I know. He started yelling at me, and I'm proud of myself for the way I handled that because that was live on air. He was yelling and screaming at me, and we were live at the time. So, and I was very inexperienced as a show host, but then I started listening to what he was saying, UFO Watchdog, and I'm like, I should stop him. This is crazy. And then I went, no, this is great radio. I'm not going to stop him. Let him hang himself. I gave him enough rope. That's what I did. V says Mike is still emailing me. It goes in 6-month cycles, V. Every time I wake the sleeping nutter, Mikey Horn or Billy Meyer, I get 6 months of harassing, trolling comments on my videos. I get 6 months of harassing emails. People are even messaging me on Facebook, DMing me on Twitter, telling me, I'm evil and I'm going to hell. Because Billy Meyer, not only is he an alien contactee, but, Jesus was an alien too, and I'm going to go to hell because I don't believe him. And, it's just ridiculous. And in fact, I saw Rich Giordano was here from GoofOn, and GoofOn is doing a debate between Mikey Horn and somebody. And I think they wanted me to, but I said, no, I don't want to do that because the real person that Mikey Horn should debate is not me, it's Cal Korff. And he ducked Cal Korff at least 3 or 4 times. Once on my show. For those that don't know, Mikey Horn came on my show, and then Cal Korff came on my show and just ripped the Billy Meyer cult to shreds. Like, he's got all the dirt on them. And then there was supposed to be a debate between Mikey Horn and Cal Korff. But after his dismal performance trying to prove to me Billy Meyer was real on the show we did together, and Cal Korff ripping Billy Meyer to shreds, he weaseled out of the debate. Then he blamed me. Then he went on another show saying I'm too cowardly to debate him. And I'm like, wait a minute. That wasn't the deal. The deal was, and I have the email still, it was all in writing. Cal Korff does an appearance, you do an appearance, then you appear together and do a debate. Then Mikey weaseled out. So henceforth, I call him Mikey the Weasel Horn. And I will continue to call him Mikey the Weasel Horn. The whole thing is ridiculous. For anybody to look at those pictures and not think they're fake, you'd have to be mentally deficient in some way, right? Who could look at those hokey pictures and say, yeah, that's really an alien spacecraft? Sure it is, Billy Meyer. Sure it is, Mikey Horn. It's just ridiculous. And I felt stupid back on my radio show for even wasting my time with it, but I couldn't get, better guests or. So I went, yeah, we'll go with this. And I thought Cal Korff had an interesting take on ripping the case to shreds, so I thought that would be fun. But, yeah, that whole case is ridiculous. And see, I don't want to do a debate with Mikey Horn because I will wipe the floor with him and his ridiculous Billy Meyer garbage. And then I'm going to have to suffer 6 months of trolling by the Troll Patrol. And part of me thinks it's like Mikey Horn with 100 different accounts sitting there all day long because these things would come, from 8 o'clock in the morning until midnight, all day long. And I would be getting hammered with these messages from these Billy Meyer cult members or Mikey Horn. I don't know. Everybody knows he's got a lot of sock puppet accounts. And I just don't want, I don't want that. I don't want to invite the nutter into my life again. So I say, debate Cal Korff, Mikey Horn, or are you going to weasel out of it again? He's weaseled out of debating Cal Korff like at least 3 or 4 times that I'm aware of. Once with me. And I have all the emails to prove he weaseled out of it. Maybe someday we'll share those. But again, that would be inviting the Billy Meyer crazy train back in my life. And I'm trying to keep the Billy Meyer crazy train out of my life. But I did post this clip of Mikey Horn citing a convicted child molester as proof of an alien laser gun. And I did that because he was just on GoofOn's show, and I wanted people to know what kind of a person Mikey Horn is and how desperate he is to prove his fake trash can lid UFO messiah. Oh, jeez. No, it's not the Billy Meyer group, not that I'm aware of. It's just another show host, and I'd rather not mention them. So, ask me privately, and I'll let you know if you really want to know anybody. Everybody knows where to find me. You can email me at truthseekershow@gmail.com. You can DM me on Twitter. Make sure you follow me on Twitter. It's the best way to keep up with what's going on with the show. It's just at Stephen Cambion on Twitter. Or you can follow me on Facebook. Again, it's just Stephen Cambion on Facebook. And you can PM me there as well, or DM me on Twitter, or email me at truthseekershow@gmail.com. Pretty easy to get a hold of. But I do have to mention that I'm always at that 5,000 friends limit on Facebook. So check out Truthseekers just search for Truthseekers on Facebook. And you will find our Facebook group dedicated solely to Truthseekers. And I post all the shows there. So we're going to wrap things up here. But before I do, I want to thank the incredible audience that we had tonight. I want to thank the incredible guests that we had tonight. I want to thank all you kind and generous super chatters and super sticker people. It really does mean a lot to me to have that support. This is a viewer-supported show. There's a money button down there. Throw money at me, right? That's one of the best ways to support the show. The other best way to support the show is to like, comment, subscribe, and share these videos. Share some of these videos with a few of your friends. Send them some of these videos. Send them our channel link address. It really does help to increase our viewership here. And the final thing I want to remind everybody is if you are listening in audio podcast land, you're missing half the fun. We record the shows live, and then they are distributed to the audio podcast networks, and you can get our audio podcasts anywhere pods are cast. Spreaker, iHeartRadio, Spotify, Amazon Music, virtually anywhere that you could get a podcast. Just search for Truthseekers and you'll find us. But what I want to remind you is that the show is recorded live with our live chat, and you hear all this interaction. You can ask us questions. You can ask the guests questions. It's a very interactive show. And if you're just listening in audio podcast land, you're missing half the fun. So please do go over to YouTube and just put Truthseekers, one word, in the YouTube search bar. You'll see a strange guy with sunglasses. That would be me, your host, Stephen Cambion. Hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell, and then you will know when we're having a live show, and you too can come and participate in our live chat. You are all most welcome. Which link is expired, friends? Oh, I have to do a new Discord link. Yes, and we also have a Discord server. I will be putting a new Discord invite link. I hate that it expires after a week or so. I will be putting that on Twitter as soon as we get off the air here tonight. So just look for it. Yeah. Oh, Spooky has made one. So there you go. Great. And Spooky has put it in the live chat. You want to join our Discord server. And I failed at it today. But most days I check in with the Discord server, or I just hang out in there and talk to our show our show audience members in there while I'm working on other things throughout the day or night. So it's a good place if you're interested in these topics and the show here. It's a good place to hang out. And so it's not just when we're doing a live show that you can participate in these interesting chats with like-minded people. It's at all times now, thanks to our Discord server. And thanks, Spooky, for making a new link. Much appreciated, Spooky. And Spooky is our new clip producer. I think that Spooky is working on something great called the Dark Playground Hypothesis. This is my hypothesis about the UFO phenomenon, and more about that later. We got a lot of stuff to catch up on in future shows. We've got Corey Good's conference being a complete and total dismal failure. I shouldn't laugh at a man's misfortune, but in his case, I will allow it, right? We've got this Angeli, right? What a nothing burger that was, but people want me to cover it. We'll cover it. And then we also have coming up something called PhD Pantygate. What's that you say? PhD Pantygate? Yes, yes. Noted former college professor and UFO researcher David Jacobs recently got canceled. Why? Because while one of his alien abductee contactees was under hypnosis, he was telling her to send panties. Yeah. And apparently, there's a whole controversy about this, and it would take too long to really explain it, but we're going to cover that. It's called Pantygate. Yes, that's right. You too can get canceled from UFO conferences for being a creeper and asking a girl to send her panties to you. Amazing. Amazing world we live in, friends. Freedom Punch Girl says, Corey Good, excellent show, thanks Stephen and the Cash Clown. And Freedom Punch Girl says, Corey Good supports Billy Meyer. I have never heard that, but it wouldn't surprise me. Oh, and it's interesting, Spooky sent me earlier that Corey Good is throwing Michael Sala under the bus, saying his information is not accurate. So those two probably had a falling out too. Yeah, Mario Heat is here. Welcome back. Where you been, brother? Praise the cash, praise the cash, praise the cash. Good night, Cambion. Yeah. And on that note, friends, we are going to bounce right out of here, right? I'm not sure what's not okay. When is the next show? The next show is tomorrow night at 9 p.m. Going to try my best to start keeping a schedule. So from now on, at least Monday through Thursday, there will be a show at 9 p.m. I decided I've been a little lazy with that, but then we might move the show to 10 o'clock because I know a lot of people want to catch Goofon's show, and I think he's on at 8 o'clock, or he keeps messing with the times, like 8:15 or something, and we'd rather not compete. So, and surely we'd get a bigger audience if people weren't bouncing back and forth between our two shows, and sometimes we overlap, so we may move it to 10 o'clock, but for right now, our show's Monday through Thursday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. However, no, Monday through Wednesday. Thursday is we're gonna have a show as well this week, but it's gonna be later because I have to drive all the way to the cabin, and I almost never make the 9 o'clock show time. I get there at like 8:50 or something, and and for people that don't know, the cabin, it takes a little time to get the cabin together. Like I get there and I got to turn the power on, I got to turn the propane on, and all this different stuff. And I can't just jump on a stream 5 minutes after I get there. So, and I'll keep everybody updated. We're going to be making an announcement as well because in September, when my children go back to school, we're going to have an increased schedule. What does that mean? We're going to be doing a short show in the afternoon, like maybe a half hour or an hour max. And then the long form, all of the interview shows will be at night, probably 10 p.m. There's plenty of things to cover. There's plenty of things to talk about. I have a folder right now with something like 40 different show topics, all already researched with things to share in each of the folders and things like that, talking points, bullet points. I don't really script the show, but I will have like talk about this, talk about this, talk about this. Anyway, we've got a big wealth of backlog of researched shows ready to go, and doing 3 shows a week, we don't really get to them all. But I think when we increase things in September, we're going to be pumping out a lot more content. As long as there's demand. Now, if I start doing 2 shows a day, getting the same views that I got with 1 show a day, then we'll go back to the 1 show a day. We've got to be flexible here, and really adapt and overcome. And that's what we're going to do here. So I want to thank each and every one of you for being here, friends. You always hear me say it, and it's true. I love it when there's an audience. There's nothing worse than putting a lot of passion and time and energy into something, and then it doesn't work out because you show up to the gig and nobody's there to see it. I've been there, friends. I have done that, and I much prefer it when there's an actual audience. So what can I say, friends? Thank you for coming here, spending some time with me, and being a part of mine. Until next time, friends, my name is Stephen Cambion. Good night, and God bless all of you.